The emotional cost of not speaking up in FIFO. When I was bullied and harassed in FIFO, I didn't want to speak up, and it was mainly because I was fearful of losing my job. I was a single mum, so I had to keep this job. I didn't want to be targeted a troublemaker, and I didn't want there to be any repercussions to my career or my performance. So I kept quiet, and I understand why others also don't speak up either, because they themselves don't want to be targeted, and you just never know how the company's going to respond when you speak up. So a lot goes on in your mind, and you're playing different scenarios around constantly. And I know one thing that I did was that I constantly replayed the situation over and over again in my head, as if there was some way that I could now change that, instead of dealing with the fact that it's already happened. And so when I was bullied and harassed in my FIFO job, I internalized a lot of stuff, and I felt like I couldn't really talk to really anybody that was a family or friend, because they weren't in mining and they didn't understand the FIFO environment. And nobody's ever going to understand the importance and the reasons that you're doing this job. No one's ever going to understand that better than you. So it does feel safer to keep it quiet than for speaking up. And the silence itself becomes some sort of survival mode, which I don't see as any sort of weakness, because you are doing at the time what you believe to be the best thing for you. So the question becomes, what do people misunderstand about women who stay quiet on site? And the first and foremost thing that I want to say is, you're doing it because you believe it to be the best way of you handling this. But when we internalize this, what it can do is it can make this stay with us for a lot longer than what it necessarily has to, because we're trying to deal with it on our own and we've got no help, we've got no assistance. So what I'm doing is, and why it matters so much, is because I've been through it. I understand FIFO. I do not see myself as any sort of like counsellor or EAP assistance, because quite often the people that are offering that support have never been through this themselves, and they don't get the FIFO lifestyle. They don't get the routine. They don't get how remote and how isolated it is, and how you are removed from all your normal family support network. So this is why it's so crucial to me to offer working with someone like myself who has been through it as a woman. I understand it, and know I will never be in your shoes and understand it to the depth that you are thinking it and you're feeling it. But I certainly know how it felt for me when I was in it. What most people don't see when you're struggling in silence, what it looks like is you on the outside pretending that everything is fine, and that you're trying to hold it together, and that you're trying to pretend to be something that you no longer are. And that in itself can be super tiring. And it's not who you really are. Something has affected you, and something has, it's on your mind now, and and now you're trying to be something that you're not. And that in itself is super tiring. But that does not discount what has happened and the reasons for why you're staying silent, or why you're still trying to fit in, or you're still trying to be part of the crew, when in actual fact, what you do is you're feeling like an outcast. So you're faking it on the outside, but you're also faking it on the inside as well. And you're no longer able to be true to yourself. And I bet the night before you fly to site, you are dreading getting on that plane. And for me, that would show up as anxiety. I would get cranky at my partner, cranky at my daughter. And I didn't even realize the connection wasn't because they've done anything wrong. It's because I was so on edge and dreading getting on that plane that I was taking it out on everyone else. And I suppose, in a way, that's me not taking responsibility for my own actions and being accountable to myself. And so, what does the emotional load on women look like? My opinion in mining and for females in the mining industry, in FIFO especially, you need to be able to do things better, faster, stronger, more effective. And it's so much harder for you to prove yourself in that environment than it is for men. I don't know if that's ever going to change, and I don't know if it's always been like that. I can just talk about my experience and my time in mining. In FIFO, it just always seemed like I was having to watch my back. And I would see others get progressed in their roles, and I was never a bad performer, and yet I stayed stagnant. And I think that's because the relationship that I had with my manager, I wasn't a drinker, I wasn't a smoker, I didn't speak to people sarcastically and hang shit on everybody. I didn't go to the pub. I just kind of kept to myself because my main reason for being there was to support and put a roof over the head of my young daughter and myself as a single mum. And so my priorities were different. And I just felt like I never really fitted in. And I think that maybe led to me becoming more emotional in my situation when my manager said something to me and how I took it, that led me to feeling bullied, which perhaps I blew out of proportion or perhaps it was justified. But to me, what he said to me during my performance review, I held on to for 3 years working with this person. And I know in an instant he said it and he never gave it any more thought. It was done in a second for him. But for me, I carried it as something for 3 years. And it turned me from enjoying going to my job to something that was I just dreaded and hated. And I hated getting on that plane. And I really used to work myself up. And for sure, that led into my home life. As I said, about, I would take it out on my daughter, I'll take it out on my partner, and not even realize that they weren't doing anything wrong. It was just me using my coping skills that I had at the time to be able to deal with this. It also led me to emotional eat in a way that I had only ever done once before when I was going through a marriage breakup. So I was turning to food, buffering with food in a way for emotional support because of his comment and how I interpreted it and how much I took that on. So I went to food. For you, it could be turning to some sort of other outlet, whether it be gambling or drugs or on your break where you might be finding that you're drinking a lot more just to dull that memory and to dull that pain that's going on for you. This is where it's crucial to understand that for me to break the cycle, I had to figure out what was going on in my head, what was within my control, and what I was actually doing to myself at the end of the day. And that's where the major breakthroughs came through for me. So, what 9.5 years on site taught me was that I observed most women go through some sort of trauma, whether it be removal from their family or from their friends or relationship breakdowns or not getting along with their back to back or their crew or their supervisor. I'm not an isolated case, and I know that because I saw women around me suffer in silence and struggle the same as me. Now, some of them would talk about it with others, some of them would internalize it, And then you would see other people where you think everything is rainbows and daisies and sparkles, but I even doubt for them if they were just also putting on a front as well. So the peace of mind this brings me is that I am not an isolated case, and I can surely not be the only one that has felt like this throughout my career. Now, having said that, because you are so protected on what's going on for you, I don't expect you're going to follow me. I expect it's going to be super hard to reach out for any sort of help, even if you choose to come and chat with me. Even that in itself is a huge, massive step, because even reaching out to me, you even identifying who it is, like I don't care who it is. I care about you as the person. I don't care about the company. I don't care about the other people. I just care about you, because I've seen so many women go through this. I know I'm not an isolated case. So when I'm speaking about this and sharing what happened to me, in the hope that you can see that there maybe is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, it's to shed a light simply on the fact that this does happen and you are for sure not alone. But how you decide to deal with it is totally your choice. And so patterns I saw repeated for women across site was women were on site that felt just like me, from either their manager or some of their crew, or something's happened to them on site. We're not an isolated case whatsoever. So if there's any comfort that comes in listening to this, is that where you are now stuck is not where you have to be forever. Where you are now stuck does not define who you're going to be in the future or what jobs you're going to have in the future either. And certainly where you are now stuck does not mean that you have to quit and look for another job or step out of FIFO or go back to a 9 to 5 job in the city that isn't going to pay you as good and give you the time off. There are certainly options there. So reach out. If at all you want to have a chat, you don't have to go into detail. And I know this is super hard too. The other thing is you're already replaying this story so many times in your head. The last thing you want to do is have to speak to someone else again and explain it all again from scratch. Because every time you start that story, you are reliving it in that moment, and that creates a whole lot of pain for you. And I get that. What is the real cost of staying silent over time? I'm speaking on my experience and in what I've seen in other women. It for sure is going to impact confidence, self worth, self esteem, um, self respect. You start doubting yourself. It can lead into affecting your performance at work. It can certainly lead to having accidents because your mind is distracted. So over time, it is just generally going to wear you down. And unless you tell yourself, it's okay, it doesn't affect me, I wonder if you really scratch the surface on that, if that's the actual truth, or are you just constantly trying to tell yourself that in the hope that this will go away on its own? Emotional shutdown, hypervigilance, and exhaustion. As if FIFO working itself is not already hard enough, carrying this extra burden around with you, these extra thoughts, negative thoughts, it has to have some sort of impact. Job satisfaction for sure is probably going to go down. And thinking that quitting is going to make any difference, removing yourself from that environment is one thing. But to carry the burden of quitting a job that is financially supporting you, that's a whole new ballgame. So the last straw should be in quitting. You have to take a step before that and really think about, is quitting the only option that you have? I know the company is going to be offering you EAP. Think about independent support as well, but really consider, is jumping out of this job really the best option? Because you're still going to be taking this emotional load with you if you haven't sorted out that emotional load and what's going on. Is it possible that you can change how you're feeling and thinking about this so that you can stay in your job and on your terms and not have this affect you? So consider what would help without the risk. And the risk is going to the company and not knowing how they're going to react, what they're going to do, and how they're going to be treating you. The lower risk is to reach out to someone independent and to seek help to see if that's an option. The choice is yours. Ultimately, the choice is always going to be yours. The offer is there, though, to reach out to someone that, firstly, I understand FIFO. I've studied life coaching and resilience, and just in maybe one conversation might be just enough for you to see a bit of hope and relief for what it is now that you're carrying and ruminating on over and over again. So, reaching out for support doesn't need to be seen as a weakness, because I know to survive in FIFO, you need to have that tougher outer shell. You've already created that. You're already in a male dominant environment, and all those horrible terms like fit in or fuck off, all those things. So, why can't you still be you and still do FIFO? Why do we need to morph ourselves into something that we're not in order to fit into an environment so that we can go to work, earn a living, and come home physically and mentally safe? That's our right to do. So perhaps these are some common thoughts that women have in FIFO. I should be able to handle this. Should you though? Because until I got into FIFO, I'd already done 11 years in mining, and I'd never ever come across anything like this before. 11 years in mining and then 9 years in FIFO being exposed to all this rubbish. It was rubbish. It's not that bad. Well, yeah, it can be that bad. And in my instance, when I was bullied, I got physically sick. I got shingles. I had to get cortisone injection. My body became so tight. I was actually nauseous to be able to go to work. It affected me in ways that I had never experienced anything like it before. And it was just, my brain was totally out of control when it came to thinking about that scenario over and over again, and then having to go back to that environment and working with those people over and over again. It got to the point where it was affecting me mentally and physically, and it showed up in my relationships. It was traumatizing. It was an awful experience. I understand you don't want to make it worse. This is such a primitive brain thing because you just want self-preservation, self-protection. And I understand too that going to the company, it's such a wild card. You don't know how they're going to respond. Are they going to take your side, their side, statements? Who's going to get involved? How far is this going to go? Like, there are so many scenarios out there on the what ifs if you take it to the company. Look, I have no hesitation for anyone that expresses that they can't take it to the company. I am 100% behind you because you just don't know. In my opinion on EAP, you don't know who you're going to get on the other end of that call. They've probably never done FIFO. Do they really understand it? Is it a scripted call? I don't believe it's confidential. That's my opinion. They're going to find out what site you're on, what department you work in. If there's only a few females in there, they're going to narrow it down pretty quick. So reaching out to EAP, I don't believe is helpful either. And also, when you're on site in an isolated position, who wants to speak to someone and make a call that you're going to speak to someone in 2 weeks? You don't need help in 2 weeks. You need help right now on site when you're battling through this on your own. And I don't trust anyone 100%. You are going to keep your mouth super shut because the one person you confide in might say something. The one person you confide in might tell someone else. I totally get it. And the whole time, You feel like you've got your back to the wall. You feel like you're in it on your own and that there's no one that you can trust. 100% I get that. 100%. But I have shared with you a little bit about my experience, a little bit about how I overcame my experiences and what helped me. And if there's anything that you can take away from this, is knowing that you're not in this alone, and watching this might give you some insight on how you can start your journey of healing what has happened to you. Private support exists. How that looks for you, what you choose, is totally your choice. The offer is there if you want to reach out and just have a chat. It's pretty much a Zoom call exactly like we're on now, and we just connect. You can tell me as much of your story as you want or as little. You don't have to go into names. You don't even have to tell me what site you're on. Just take it for consideration that speaking to someone outside of the company could be the relief and the first step towards feeling better about this, so that the voices in your head, the replaying it like you're watching a movie over and over again, can somehow be subdued. And you don't have to carry this alone. Like I fully get it, and I fully get why you wouldn't want to go to the company. And I know that reaching out for EAP support as well is a really tough one. So I'm not encouraging you to reach out to anyone. I just want to reassure you that an alternative support offer is there. The choice is ultimately yours. And if you choose to still stay silent, then I just hope that through some means that you find, it's able to lift the heaviness that you're currently feeling, and eventually you get the relief that you're so desperately craving. I am Bettina. I am the founder of Women in FIFO. I am a life coach and resilience mentor. I did 9.5 years in FIFO, but I've done 20 years in mining. I understand the environment that you're working in and that you're expected to operate in. And now I offer my help to you when you're ready.